Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Like and subscribe before we get this party started. I was supposed to do today's show with my compadre Dino, but unfortunately, he has to evacuate Louisiana due to the storm that's coming. So I'm going to be handling this all on my own, fellas. So today, let's get straight into it. What we're going to be talking about is the latest approval of the Pfizer vaccine by the FDA. As you can read, CNN, what does it mean for the Pfizer vaccine to have full FDA approval? Our medical experts weigh in. Now, many in the left are proclaiming, oh, all you unvaxxed guys, there should be no reason you don't get vaxxed now. It's FDA approved. But for many out there who have all this trust in these institutions of ours, let's say the FBI, the CIA, the NSA, we all know that these institutions are utterly corrupt. And the FDA is one of those institutions that is very corrupt as well. So we're going to get straight into it. So, as you can read from this article, it says FDA Alzheimer's call slammed as worst drug approval in recent U.S. history. Now, the article reads, the U.S. Food and Drug Administration controversy, recent approval of an Alzheimer's drug, ADUHELM, has been subject from vociferous criticism from many in the scientific community, amidst concerns surrounding the drug's efficacy, price. Several experts, advisors to the FDA, have resigned in protest and calls for top officials to step down. So, it seems like the FDA has a credibility issue recently, especially with, and this article is also from June 17, 2001. So the FDA isn't this prestigious and honorary, it's not this prestigious honorary institution of our government. As you can see, NPR is reporting 3 experts have resigned from an FDA committee over Alzheimer's drug approval. Now, let's read this article now, because this is where it gets juicy. 3 experts have resigned from the Food and Drug Administration Advisory Committee after the agency approved the Alzheimer's drug ADUHELM against the wishes of nearly every member of the panel. So, nearly every member of the panel went against the approval of this drug. And you know what the good old FDA did? They approved it anyways, right? So let's continue. The drug is a generic name, was approved on Monday, setting off a variety of responses from celebrations among some patients, caregivers, and doctors to pointed questions about the drug's benefits and costs. Now, as you can see, the FDA is greenlighting ADUHELM despite not having enough proof. I'm going to emphasize on that. Proof that the drug will help Alzheimer patients. So the FDA is going to approve a drug that it doesn't have enough proof that the drug will help the patients. Interesting. The controversial approval could set a precedent in how similar drugs are evaluated in the future, Roguesgalleryshow says. Roguesgalleryshow was one of the members on the advisory board, and he's a professor at Harvard Medical School who is a director of programs on regulations, therapeutics, and laws at Brigham and Women's Hospital. So we got the FDA approving drugs that the advisory board is going against. Very interesting, ladies and gentlemen. Let me know what you think in the comments about this, because this is being reported as of June 11th, 2021. So the FDA is seeming to have a little bit of credibility issues currently, right? Now, this is from Breast Cancer Action, right? And they say, why we oppose Dr. Janet Woodcock, the head of the FDA. I believe President Biden nominated her as the head of the FDA because before she was the acting FDA commissioner. So let's read the juicy part of this letter they sent the Biden administration. It says, Dr. Janet Woodcock is well known for relaxing the criteria needed for certain drugs to reach the market. Interesting. And is criticized by opioid and pain management groups for pushing the approval of drugs despite inadequate evidence of safety. I'm going to repeat that just so you guys could hear that one more time. She has pushing the approval of drugs despite inadequate evidence of safety in relations to opiate and pain management groups. We oppose Dr. Woodcock because her track record suggests that if she were to lead the FDA, she would favor industry interests over public health. Emphasize public health. Undermine scientific evidence regarding the safety and efficacy of breast cancer drugs and put patients at risk. She has a history of strong industry ties. This comes with accompanying conflicts of interest that interfere with her ability to prioritize patients and consumers. She has been heavily criticized for her lack of oversight and regulation of opioids as the head of the agency's Center of Drug Evaluation Research. Under her leadership, the agency allowed pharmaceutical companies to evade transparency and get away with false claims that drugs were more effective and less addictive than they really were. In a recent letter to the Biden administration from Physicians for Social Responsibility and co-signed by 28 groups, it is stated that as the head of the CDER, Dr. Woodcock was responsible for one of the worst regulatory agency failures in U.S. history. She even pushed for the approval of drugs despite inadequate evidence of safety. So these are the people that are approving the Pfizer vaccine. Interesting. And now we're not casting any doubts on the Pfizer vaccination, just for clarification for YouTube purposes. If you have any comorbidities, you might want to get vaccine. If you're obese, you might want to get the vaccine, because I think majority of the patients that have died from COVID have been morbidly obese. So if you are obese, we do recommend you getting some sort of vaccination. Now, let's get deeper into the rabbit hole. Now, for all you idiots out there that want to say, oh, this isn't true. Well, this is fact checked. This article is fact checked and cites 17 cited research articles. And right here, this area, it says fact check. You see that? Fact checked. So the chances of you taking what I'm saying here and trying to spin it some way, it's not going to happen. This is the big enchilada, fellas. Now, this article talks about this 37-year-old Timothy Woody Wisak, and he was prescribed Zoloft, and as being prescribed Zoloft, the doctors prescribed him more milligrams than he was supposed to get. As a result, he ended up committing suicide they found out because of his use of Zoloft. Now, let's get down to the juicy part, right? Let's go down to the juicy part. Where is it? As you can see, the amount drug companies spend to get new drugs on the market is a constant source of debate. Industry claims that it is in the billions. It frequently uses this number to justify charging Americans higher drug prices. Now, do you hear that, ladies and gentlemen? Their excuse for charging Americans high drug prices is because it pays billions of dollars. Billions of dollars. Industry claims it's in the billions of dollars for new drug on the market is a constant. This is ridiculous. I'm just upset right now. So let's continue on. In 2011, Donald W. Light, which we have more stuff on him. We're gonna be bringing him up later on the show today. Donald W. Light and Rebecca Warburton challenged that figure, though, ladies and gentlemen. Light is a professor of comparative healthcare policy at the University of Medicine and Dentistry of New Jersey and the founding fellow of the Center of Bioethics at the University of Pennsylvania. According to Light and Warburton, $56 million is the net cost to companies after taxpayers cover 50% of the research and development expense for each new drug they develop. They say drug companies get a large portion of the cost paid back from write-offs, National Institutes of Health grants, and other. So there it is, right? These big pharma companies are claiming that they're spending billions of dollars to get these drugs approved for us. But they're not mentioning, well, first of all, they're lying. They're lying. So if we're going with Dr. Light, they're saying it's not billions, it's more like teen digit millions, right? The drug companies get a large portion of the cost paid back from write-offs. 50% of the research and development expenses for each new drug they develop comes from taxpayers. So taxpayers are paying for high drug prices because these companies are spending billions to create them. Interesting. But as we scroll down, this article mentions each year more than 2 million Americans suffer serious adverse reactions from the FDA-approved drugs like Zoloft. These include effects lead to about 100,000 deaths, according to a 2016 study published in the International Journal of Health Service by Sonali Saluji and colleagues. Whoa, that's a pretty big number. 100,000 deaths as a result from adverse reactions from FDA-approved drugs. So let's dive a little more into this. Let's see. Scroll down. So as you can see, this I'm gonna highlight this for you guys so you guys can see it. This is a quote, and it says the FDA is supposedly a watchdog agency mandated to protect the public from dangerous and ineffective drugs. In fact, the FDA is ineffective and dangerous to the public. This is from Alexandra Bigham, clinical psychiatrist and professor at John F. Kennedy University. So this article is saying, according to a 2003 survey quoted by the Consumer Reports, FDA reviewers felt rushed and pressured to approve medication. There is also some studies that found that the faster the drug was reviewed, the greater chance for adverse events surfacing after the drug hits the market. As you can see, Mary Kay Olson of Tulane University says each 10th month reduction in review time period is an 18% increase of serious adverse reactions, 11% increase of drug-related hospitalization, a 7.2% increase in drug-related deaths. Interesting. As of 2014, 37% of drugs approved were only backed by a single study, ladies and gentlemen. 45% of all drugs were approved on a surrogate endpoints. 68% compared new drugs to only placebos, which just means they determined something was better than nothing. Not that the drug was better than any other drug. Let me know what you think in the comments. So let's scroll down. It just gets even juicier and juicier. As of 2015, Consumer Reports detail several issues with FDA pre- and post-approval process. And some of the most important ones are clinical trials are too small to give the proper estimation of adverse events. Second one, trials only last for a few months, but some dangerous adverse events occur after several years. Another one, most trials use specially selected healthy participants to show the drug works, but this doesn't reflect its use in the real world in a bigger, sicker population. Post-approval issues with the FDA drug reviews. Adverse events are not always reported because reporting is voluntary. The FDA may request post-marketing studies to follow up on safety concerns, but drug makers don't always do them. Drug makers don't always publish clinical trials with unfavorable results. For example, Merck only published studies showing Vioxx patients tolerated the drug well. Several years later, down the road, it revealed data showing people were having heart attacks. The US also has no system to regularly scan and analyze large databases of patients for adverse events as well. It's mind blowing. It makes me upset to the point where I just like, what do we do here? There's no accountability in these organizations, and they basically could do whatever they want. Now, here's an important point I want to let you guys know. 1/3 of the FDA funding, one-third of the funding is from taxpayers from the FDA. The agency receives the majority of its drug review funding from Big Pharma, the very industry it should be regulating. It is a little known fact that most Americans, and it raises red flags for the number of consumer groups. Another fact you guys need to know is that the FDA does not conduct its own independent studies. That's very interesting. Drug safety and effectiveness when approving drugs. So they don't use their own independent studies. It relies on data and studies provided from the manufacturers. This means that the FDA can only base its approval or denial on the information the drug company provides. The drug companies may cherry pick the data they want the FDA to see, according to Dr. Alexander Bigham. Let me know what you think in the comments. This does not sound good from the FDA, from where I'm standing. And then let's just put cherries on top of at this point. The 10 worst drug recalls in the history of the FDA. So you got at least 10 of them, but they're such a prestigious organization, you can't question their credibility. What's wrong with you, Chew? What is wrong with you, mister? So let's take a look at some of the drugs. So this drug, fen, recalled in 1977 after 24 years on the market. Financial damage awards victim close to 14 billion. 14 billion, that's what it'd be. This DES, it was recalled in 1975. Financial damage steep, but difficult to quantify because each manufacturer paid out legal damages correlated to respectable market share. And here's another big secret about Big Pharma and the FDA. When you suffer from an adverse effect, you can't really sue these guys because they say, well, the FDA approved it, so you have to sue the FDA. You can't sue us. So it's a little game they like to play on us. Here's another one. Servestane, maker buyer, recalled in 2001. Financial damage, litigation-related damages totaled $1.2 billion. Vioxx, maker Merck, recalled in 2004. Financial damage nearly $6 billion in litigation-related expenses alone. Valdecobe, Bextra, maker Pfizer. Whoa, no way Pfizer's on this list, guys. Pfizer cannot be on this list. This is insane. Recalled in 2005 after just 1 year on the market. 1 year it only made. Financial damage over $2 billion in legal awards and expenses. This is insane, ladies and gentlemen. So before we end this broadcast, I just want to bring this to you guys' attention, right? Look what this article says. FDA KRATOM ban would harm the public and damage the agency's credibility, right? Now, according to the CDC, last year there was roughly 93,331 deaths related to opioids. 2/3 caused by opioids. Meanwhile, restrictions on legitimate opioids prescriptions leave few alternatives for people with chronic pain. Some turn to illicit opioids. And I know plenty of guys that in order to support their habit, they had very bright careers, especially in the military. They had chronic pain, and it was so addictive that they couldn't stop taking the opioids that were prescribed to them while they was in the Marine Corps. So there are a few alternatives for people that are suffering from opioids or pain, chronic pain issues. But this drug, many claiming that it has helped many suffering from opioids, right? So let's get into it, ladies and gentlemen. KRATOM has a dose-dependent effects. At low doses, it can act as a mild stimulant. In Southeast Asia, people chew the leaves of the mitergrania to maintain focus, much as one might drink a cup of coffee to remain alert. At a higher dose, KRATOM acts as a sedative and pain reliever, although this dose-dependent relationship is not well understood. Also, throughout this article, it mentions that the federal agencies have attempted to ban KRATOM for years. So, of course, the FDA will want to ban something that actually helps people out. Are we surprised here? I don't think so. In 2016, the U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration announced plans to classify KRATOM as a Schedule I controlled substance compound, and its category are said to have no currently accepted medical use and a high potential for abuse. Later in the article, it mentions that the FDA secures a global KRATOM ban. Countless people could die by suicide and unintentionally overdose. Many Americans say KRATOM curbs cravings for opioids. So this drug curbs cravings for opioids, and we just had 93,000 people die related to fentanyl, painkillers from the Sackler family. You know, stuff the FDA approves, of course. But according to the CDC, there was 1,807 calls regarding KRATOM from the start of 2011 to the end of 2017, an average of 258 calls per year. By comparison, during the same period, single-use laundry pads. So dumbass kids doing these laundry pod challenges, they were getting roughly 12,157 calls per year. Very big difference. Some people have died while KRATOM was in their system, but a causal link between KRATOM and death has not been established. In 2019, the CDC analyzed 27,000 overdose deaths that occurred over a 18-month period. KRATOM was detected in 152, less than 1% of these deaths. But in most of those cases, tests also revealed that the presence of drugs known to cause overdoses. Only 7 tested positive for KRATOM alone, and the researchers concluded that the presence of additional substances cannot be ruled out. So here we have another instance where the FDA won't approve a drug that will help many people kick their addiction to opioids. Let us know what you think in the comments. I think the FDA has credibility issues off the start. As you can see, we're going to go back to it. Worst drug approval in recent U.S. history. We have experts quitting. So, what's going on here? What is going on? I just don't understand this. So, another interesting thing. Look at this. Science. Hidden conflicts. Big Pharma payment to FDA advisors after drug approval sparked ethical concerns. This is not a game, ladies and gentlemen. FDA headquarters in Silver Spring, Maryland, uses well-established system to identify possible conflicts of interest before such advisory panels meet. Before the Brillianta vote, the agency mentioned no financial conflicts among the voting panelists, who included 4 physicians. As Brillianta sales took off later, however, AstraZeneca is another vaccine manufacturer that has a vaccine out there in Australia, I believe. So, however, AstraZeneca, the firm selling or developing similar cardiovascular therapy, showered the 4 with money and travel for advice. Interesting. For example, those companies paid and reimbursed cardiologist Jonathan Helpering of the Icahn School of Medicine in Mount Sinai in New York City more than $200,000 for accommodations and consulting from 2013 to 2016. During the period, for example, AstraZeneca says it's paid Hepperling more than 11,000 expenses and fees for work on the advisory board, services a data monitoring committee for clinical trials, Brillianta led by University of California. Excuse me, ladies and gentlemen. Brillianta fits a pattern of what we might be called pay-later conflicts of interest, which have been gone largely unnoticed and entirely unpoliced. And examining compensation records from the drug companies to physicians who advised the FDA on whether to approve 28 psychopharmacologic, arthritis, and cardiac renal drugs between 2008 and 2014. Science found widespread after the fact payments of researcher support of panel members. The agency safeguards against. So here we have, if you've been on the advisory board for the FDA, what these companies later do is, since you approved our drug, we later give you compensation for it. And there's no policies in position right now to stop this type of crap. So there you go, ladies and gentlemen. Why risky drugs, why the FDA cannot be trusted. The forthcoming article for the special issue of Journal Law presents evidence that about 90% of all new drugs approved by the FDA over the past 30 years are little or no more effective for patients than existing drugs. I rest my case. Ladies and gentlemen. So I seem to believe that the FDA has a credibility issue, and to me, they're not my God. The Biden administration is going to use the FDA's approval of the Pfizer vaccine and making sure that businesses, commerce, all across the board, that since it's been FDA approved, that now we had to have a mandatory vaccine program. We at Rose Gallery categorically are against this. So there it is. This is what's going on. Thanks for tuning in. Like and subscribe to the channel. Dina wasn't here with us, unfortunately, but let's hope that the brother's safe out there. So thanks, guys. Thanks for watching. It's a work in progress. We're going to get better throughout the time. So just stay patient with us, and we're going to be okay over here. So thanks.